the topic that I was given was Hindu practices and living as a Hindu from one's personal experiences and perspective. So I'm going to go through, in this outline, a personal background about me and Hinduism, its origin and its evolution, practices, and Hinduism worldwide. Some of these things may be actually overlapping with the content that's presented in other sessions or that have been already presented too. Just please bear with me. So I come from a traditional Hindu joint family in rural agrarian Tamil Nadu and a village in Tamil Nadu, India. So that's where I grew up in the leeward side of Western Ghats near the Kerala border. So I come from a Smarta Sampradaya family that follows the Advaita Vedanta school and grew up in a village among many communities who had their own practices, but there are always common linkages between communities too. And society also lived together and also celebrated a lot of aspects together. So how did I get introduced to Hinduism? Basically through elders and friends, stories and books. So that's how. I didn't go to a Patishala because by the time I started growing up, Patishalas were sort of in the decline. So I basically went to a modern school education, went through that. And so my exposure was through mainly instructions that I had received from elders and through other practices. So prayers, so daily prayers are a must as children. You get introduced to it and you just follow it and then slowly understand the significance behind it. Observing and taking part in pujas, bhajans, satsangs. Some of them used to be really fun, used to take part in it. Some of them used to be a little boring, so you try to run away, give some reasons and so on. Festivals, those were a major aspect of religion and also practices that villages did. So some festivals we used to look up to it because it used to have a lot of fun. Good food during the festivals and sometimes interesting programs. So festivals were great, sometimes holidays too. Functions in the family, so a lot of functions related to samskaras that I mention later. So like Vivaha Samskara or Simantanoyanayana, Punsavana, Upanayana. So various samskaras, there are functions associated with it. So where people come together, we have the actual ritualistic aspect of it, but also the social aspect of it. Dramas and movies. So you sometimes look at the historical dramas about, let's say, the themes from Mahabharata, Ramayana, that taught you a lot of things about the religion, and also movies. So a lot of these movies based on itihasas or religious stories. And family deity is something which was common across all communities. At least in Tamil Nadu, that's something which was very prevalent. I don't know, I think probably it's followed in other states also. And so my family deity was Kamakshi Amman. So in fact, the temple was at the end of our street. So in a lot of villages, there would be always a temple. So there's also a saying in Tamil, Koil illada ooril kudi irukade. So don't stay in a place without a temple. So that's how always temple used to be in the center. And so, and then Ishta Devata. So there's this family deity, the Kula Devata, we used to say is Kula Devata, which runs through the generation. And then Ishta Devata, that would change from people to people. So that's your personal deity that you actually would develop based upon how things are actually experienced by you, how you look at various practices, and how you develop a liking towards a particular practice and a deity. So mine was, when I was a child, I developed liking and interest towards Krishna. So that's how I basically developed my personal deity. And then Ishta Devata, basically, and then gurus. So that's a major aspect. So in our family, because we followed the Advaita Sampradaya and the Smarta Sampradaya, so the Sringeri lineage of Jagadguru Shankaracharyas, so we used to be a follower of them. But not just them, there were other gurus too, but those were the main ones. Not necessarily that you would learn everything from the guru, so you'd always have other teachers, just one guru, but you'll have many teachers, you'll have the elders, you learn from all of them. And then visits to temple, samskaras, so as I said earlier, so in life, right from birth unto death, so Garbhadhana all the way to Antyeshti, there are so many samskaras, different sutras give different number of samskaras. So most prevalent these days are the Grihya Sutras, where there are 16 Shodasha samskaras that are sort of common across various communities. And visits to temples and temple towns and holy places, those were also good avenues for that provided me with more exposure to the religion. So now observances, so once I started growing up and sort of moved away to school, living in hostels, so it became a little difficult to basically keep up with all the things that we normally do at home. But having undergone the Upanayana ceremony also myself, so I stuck to some of the basic Nitya Karma Anushtana that I took with me. I observed it very diligently through my high school and college and also to this day. And then moving and settling, so 25 years ago when I came to this country, again, so not everything is going to be the same as how I grew up. So there were adaptations that were made, and there were change in some practices and as needed as it was actually possible to observe. So those started happening. And then when children were born, basically how I tried, myself and my wife, we tried to inculcate the same thing by providing them the same similar environment that we had come up through in our childhood, through again observances, basically teaching the prayers, stories and books. And also these days multimedia is basically a great source to propagate. Of course, the only drawback is the elders, because moving away from joint families to nuclear families and away from home, basically you lose that connection most of the time. So that's one source that is less, but that's being basically complemented by other sources. So going through this, so I just wanted to let you know that my daughter, so when she was a kid, probably 1 or 2 years old, so she saw this Hanuman movie, the animated one, and she was so enamored by Hanuman's story, and she developed her personal liking Hanuman. Every time Hanuman. So the second year of her, when she was 2 years old, when she, or 2 or maybe 3, she went trick-or-treating. She said, "No, I'm going to wear Hanuman costume." So yeah, the one to the left. So, and then she would go to every house and they would ask, "Oh, who are you?" "Oh, I'm Hanuman, the flying monkey god." And they were all so excited about it. And she still holds on to Hanuman. And one reason why you asked her, "Oh, why Hanuman?" "Oh, he doesn't have a vahana. He doesn't need a vahana. He can fly on his own." 5 more minutes? Okay. Now, so we have various functions and festivals where we do certain things that help us actually also educate the children and also the rest of the members of the society. This is from a recent Navaratri Golu setting in our house, so which helps basically a temple miniature and various aspects of the temple. Coming to Hinduism, so Vedic origin, basically the Vedas, the Vedantas, Upavedas, so all those things basically were the source to what now we call as Hinduism. It was not called using that word at that time. Then we had the 6 darshanas, Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Purvamamsa, Uttamamamsa, the Purusharthas, Dharmartha, Kama, Moksha, which play a big part, the ashramas, the various stages of life, Many guiding books, and important ones for Hindus being Upanishad, Brahma Sutra, and Bhagavad Gita, the triplet known as the Prasthanatrayee. So not every Hindu actually reads all these things, probably a little bit of each. But Bhagavad Gita is one of the most popular one. Upanishad also for certain people. So this gives a block of how the Shrutis of the Apaurusheya, the Vedas come under that, and the Smritis, so how they are classified. I'm going to rush through them. Probably you are already familiar with that. And there are certain basic tenets which are very important. Satyam vada, dharmam chara, swadhyayan ma pramada. So these are things that come in Upanishad. So these things are very important. Matrudevo bhava, pitrudevo bhava, achari devo bhava, atithi devo bhava. So basically, what it means is satyam vada, speak the truth, dharmam chara, observe dharma, swadhyayan mapada, indulge in self-study always. Matrudevo bhava, consider mother as God, pitrudevo bhava, consider father as God, achari devo bhava, so consider your guru as God, atithi devo bhava, even consider the guests as God. And one thing, so the society may be patriarchal in a lot of places and also matriarchal too in some places that I know of, but always the respect starts with mother. Matrudevo bhava, that's where it starts with always. Respect for all beings, divinity is seen in everybody, not just living, but also non-living, the plants, animals, and also the jada also, even mountains. Environment, elders, ancestors, traditions, gurus, deities, and worship is also big in Hinduism. Belief in Brahman, I didn't write that, Brahman, Atman, the all-pervading supreme is Brahman, and how different sampradayas, traditions, consider that gave rise to Advaita, Dvaita, and Vishishtadvaita, Achintya, Veda, Veda, all those various traditions. But concepts are on the source is almost similar. Atman, rebirth, karma. And then everybody has to follow the dharma. There's no one universal dharma for everybody. It adapts with location, people, time, and so on. So dharma is more local, contextual, sort of intuitive, sustains, nurtures, defines duty and action for people based upon their role in the society as well as their family. Practice based on our understanding and abilities and intention. So dharma rakshati rakshitaha, that's a famous saying. So the dharma is something that is nurtured and protected, and it in turn protects you and sustains you. Also karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, those are various ways for attaining moksha, which is liberation, the ultimate, the fourth of the purusharthas, the goals of life. And then self-realization and moksha. So now everybody is eligible to do that. It's just that the ways also could be different, the way they achieve it, the actions could be different, but everybody is eligible, everybody can actually attain that. So though there are various practices, these may not be applicable in certain communities, these may not be applicable in certain other regions, they may differ. However, there is sort of an internal cultural unity across regions and sects, across vast geography, right from, all the way from the north to the southern tip, Kanyakumari, Kashmir to Kanyakumari, normally we say that. So, because even in the religious text, you would find places mentioned, like Kashi is very important even for a rural Tamil Nadu village, and so on. Quickly, so 6 traditions, you probably would have heard, and that's the amalgamation coming up into this one, Hinduism today. Important philosophies, the Vedic Dharma became the Sanatana Dharma and then called this Hinduism now. And these are things, no harm to others, charity and seva, pilgrimage, rights for our ancestors, and responsibility towards family members and others. Hinduism worldwide, the 3rd largest religion, originated, and then now it's been spread to a lot of places. It's sort of shrunk in also many places. But still, there are so many countries where there are Hindus through migration of labor, the diaspora moving because of mobility, globalization over the last couple of decades. And these are some temples, I don't know, you might recognize some of them. And important places that have Hindu symbols. The last one actually is Japan, Saraswati Temple in Japan.
Thank you.
Thank you. So 5 minutes of questions. Yeah.
I was interested in your background about Advaita Vedanta type of. So the question that I had and I was wondering is, Advaita Vedanta seems too abstract and nebulous, and it does not seem to have gained a lot of traction like other areas. In your personal experience, do you see that way also?
No, actually, Advaita Vedanta has a lot of traction in many places. So there's a lot of traditions that follow Advaita Vedanta. But the thing is, so everybody does not get into the abstract right away. There are even Adi Shankara, though he propounded Advaita Vedanta, he also, for the masses, he also provides the Bhakti Marga. He was the one who sang Bhaja Govindam too. So those to get to that place where everybody, okay, we think we are one with Brahman, everything, Jagan Mithya, Brahma Satyam. You have so many steps that you can go through. Some people can get to it faster or quicker. Some people need the other conditioning, the personal conditioning of the mind through samskaras, practices, observances to get there.
It seems like it's a long pathway to get it, right? And
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're true.
one person.
He raised his hand a little ahead of you, so.
What was the time frame when Hinduism spread across the southern part of Asia?
To the Southeast Asian countries, the Khmer, which is basically Thailand, Cambodia, Indonesia, all those things. So my understanding, because in fact recently I'd been to Cambodia, so I've gone to Siem Reap, where the famous Angkor Wat temple is present. So the local guides, they are very, though currently it's a Buddhist country, they always say, oh, yes, we are a Buddhist nation now, but our culture is all Vedic culture that came from India 2,000 years ago. So that's what they claim. Now, I have read about exchanges that happen during the Pallava period, the Chola period, from the southern kingdoms. In fact, the names of the kings too, we have Suryavarman, Jayavarman, all those names in Cambodia. You have the Mahendravarma, Narasimhavarma, Pallava, all those in the Pallava dynasty also. So prior to that, could there have been other exchanges that basically took Vedic ideas to the Southeast Asian nations? It's possible, but it happened in the first millennium. Yes.
What is the difference between Advaita and Visishta Advaita? Can you?
Yes, so we can go on for a long time on that. So Shankara propounded the Advaita philosophy, somebody else will be covering it, and Ramanuja came up with the Vishishta Advaita philosophy. So there are nuances to it, I am not going to cover it, somebody else will be covering it.
It will be covered.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Okay, thank you. Namaste.
Today's topic actually is picture I want me to introduce about Buddhism in China. Actually, I call Chinese Buddhism. This one has still somehow related to India because Buddhism originated from India. That's another one. And also, in today's topic, I will also present about how this Buddhism spread around and how it comes to China. So you can see a lot of Indian map and about those pilgrims went to India and bring the sutra back to China. Originally, this is conclusions I want to have. Big Joy suggests that I put this personal sharing in the beginning so people will know about the highlight about the conclusion. So I think that's a good idea. So instead of talking about a lot of meditation or ceremony, how I practice or go to Dharma theory, I would like to use something more like ordinary people can understand through some of the reading, my personally in my life, how the Buddhism can apply based on the novel I read. The first one is Tolstoy's Kozak. And we all know about this book is Tolstoy's first book, not the first book when he was a youth and he wrote it. And this book, actually, he tried to pursue the new life and freedom in the new area, in the Cossack area, away from Moscow. In the book, you can see that there are two stages. The first stage is that he tried to use the attitude is that he want to love the people and the land through the sacrifice and without any self-desire. But it doesn't work out well. So in the second stage, he tried to follow his inner voice and not suppress his own feeling and pursue what he wanted. And as we know that this Cossack experience is a total failure. And he went back to Moscow, has a lot of pressure, and without finding a solution about how to deal with the life and love these topics. And you can see from his writing, after his youth, then we know the War and Peace, and in the later stage, the confession, he continued to pursue the solution of this. This is just the book, and show you that the last one is the confession, the book on the confession. I do not give you guys the solution. I will do that later on. The second one I want to introduce is a Japanese, we call it the Seth Army. He's an actor, also a playwright. His father introduced him to the theater performance. Then this is something very famous. It's called What is the Shape and the Gesture of the Wind? What is that? And through here, he started to talk about the shape and gesture of the wind are through the flowers blowing in the wind. So without the flowers, you cannot see the shape of the wind. So how do that imply to you? Because performing art is the same thing. It needs to through the eyes of the audience and the appreciation of the audience. So interaction between audience and the performer, that performing art has a meaning and a dynamic life. So these two stories actually is somehow related to the Buddhism I practice in my daily life. So this is just a picture, so we can skip this one. This is the Japanese performing art. So, what does this teach us? Why Tolstoy failed in Cossack land? He tried everything possible. You can say either I'm helping people or I'm doing things based on my true voice. Seems like in our daily life, we can either do this way or that way. But we forgot about one important factor. That factor is that we always use our subjective view. We love the people the way we think is correct. We use the attitude from Moscow or from Austin, big city, to help the villagers. Maybe not appreciate about it. So that's the conclusion that I see here. When we do the practice of meditation, the Dharma, whatever, everything correct, Dharma, meditation, we keep pursuing something. We forget, we keep thinking about Buddhism is like the attachment, avoid our temptation or craving or something. But we forget about some big factor. We always think about mindfulness confined to self. Actually, it's not. This story tells us that mindfulness actually is not confined to self. We also need to know about the surrounding environment, especially the people and the land. Through his life, Tolstoy find out the land and the people is main theme of the whole story. Your life cannot avoid with those surrounding areas. So that's the key point I believe that the other religions also do the same thing. But this is important. It's not just with mindfulness, we avoid a lot of things that we free from ourselves. And that doesn't work in the modern society. You need to get involved and actively participate. Same thing about the wind shape, the gesture. I tell you, this is the main thing about the Buddhism. The law of dependent origination. All being are interdependent, include art and our thought. It's not something just like we by ourselves develop everything. That's something I don't think that's correct. It's all correlated. You cannot see this picture very well. Let's just say the fish put together, make an action. Without coordination with each other, they are not going to happen this way. So let's just tell you about it. Okay, this one I think we can skip it, but let's briefly talk about it. The concept of Buddhism actually are two main things. One is the Four Noble Truths, and another one is the law of dependent origination. We already discussed about this one. This one is just tell you that the whole world is impermanent. Because it's impermanent, so everything has the reason to occur and has the same reason to disappear. If the factors do not combine together. So that means to improvement is possible. It's not something that you always at the same stage. So that's the reason why it's very positive. A lot of things, oh yeah, if everybody else died, then what's the meaning of the life? But actually, the Buddhism, I think the other religion also the same thing is that we need to actively doing things. So we know that we are going to change for better because there's a reason, because it's correlation, because it's impermanent. Impermanent means opportunity. It's not because we are going to lose something static. This part I think we can skip it because we all know about Buddhism is from India and it's about Han Dynasty and so this one I think I can skip. We talk about the Chinese because it's a part that we can talk about. Chinese philosophy is mainly Tai Chi, Laos, and Confucius. And we can talk about it a little bit. Before the Buddhism time, China is dominated by these philosophy and teaching. And the one very close to the Buddhism is Taoism. And China, because the emperor liked the hierarchy, so the Confucianism actually is dominating before Buddhism spread into China. Let's talk about a little bit about Taoism. The Taoists actually, they have a famous word, say, we are doing nothing. But actually, I can do everything. So what does that mean? It means that we don't do things unnecessarily. We don't do things that is not going to produce a positive effect. We don't do things that something can create more conflict. Look at the Tai Chi, you know the Tai Chi Chuan, or everything that you do not really use a very strong force. You use the other enemy's force and to do the self-defense. So this is kind of the Taoist the philosophy. They also like for the nature and harm, and that is very similar to the
4 minutes.
Okay. Okay. Now we can skip this one. That's a temple looks like about the Taoist temple. I took this picture. This is I grew up in this neighborhood, so this is in Taiwan. I'm going to skip this one. We focus on the Buddhism actually. Theravada is through the northwest, and Theravada actually is through the southeast from Sri Lanka and you go to the Thailand and Burma. And here I want to focus on the Kushan Empire. Without the Kushan empires, it's very difficult to spread Buddhism into China because the Silk Road, before we have a Silk Road, the Silk Road is not well maintained and it's still not quite popular at that time. Look at the Kushan. Kushan actually dominated this region in northwest of India and also in Uzbekistan these days. So because of Kushan Empire, the Silk Road is wide open, and that is about the time the Buddhism has spread to China. And this is my famous one. I would like to show you that this Faxian is the first one, it's not Xuanzang. The first one came to India to get the sutra. And you can see how tough that is. There's a Kolakunan highway. And this is all the journey from China, from Shanghai and Surat and desert and come to the, this is a very difficult one from Pakistan and came to the area itself. That's the journey. And this is Xuanzang actually doing the similar thing, but it's more wide, the coverage is higher. On the way back, you can see he used Afghanistan, it's called Wakhan corridor, it's also very tough. But at that time, he has a lot of people coming with him, so it's safer. And this is the coverage in India. You also take the same original places from Shanghai and all the way to the Uzbekistan. He did not take the Kolakunan because it's safer. The Silk Road is safer. Kolakunan at that time still not considered Silk Road. So this is the pilgrims. Those pilgrims, actually, a lot of people do not know. It's not sponsored by anybody. Actually, it's prohibited by the emperor. So the question is why those people want to risk their life, not through the organization or religion organization, not through the sponsor from the court. And why they want to do it. And it's amazing. And this part is very unique to all other religions compared to other religions. I think I will skip most of it. I want to introduce some of the pictures so people can understand today's Buddhism in China. This is very similar to Khandala style, the cave. This is in China. This is an early stage of when Buddhism in China, they have this cave in the Henan. There's a giant Buddha. And this one is the Xuanzang's statue in China, Xi'an today. And this is the sutra when he bring back from India, put it here. And here is the first Buddhism temple in China called White Horse, the White Horse. Quite differently is the Tibetan Buddhism because its life is strong associated with religion, so actually it's dominated people's life too. People here are doing debating. So there's a gesture, that's how they do the debating process about the debating the Dharma. And they use the hand. When they want to ask questions, they use a gesture called a hand gesture. And they're very devoted, so they can bow and lie down this way and for months or a year to Lhasa. So that's very good. Yeah. So I think I'm pretty much done here, and I hope everybody can understand better about Buddhism in China. Oh yes.
What other slides do you have?
Slides. This is just a Zen retreat. This is in New York, and some of it is in Taiwan. And this is the Zen style. You can see the simple, just like Taoism. And there's a meditation, and this is about Japanese tea. It's also related to Zen. And Japanese garden is related to Zen. Zen, from here you can see simple, but it includes everything. And that kind of concept. That means one flower is a whole world. And that means that you directly see the Buddha this way through meditation. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Question. China claims that Tibet is part of China.
Yeah.
When and how Tibet become part of China?
Tibet is part of China is for political reason. And personally, just like from Taiwan, I don't agree with that. So the next topic originally is Buddhism in China. I changed up Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, so it's something related to that. So I changed the name already.
Any other questions?
Okay.
So, after Buddhism and then the Taoism and Confucianism came down?
Not quite, because without the Taoism, Buddhism won't accept in China. I include that in the topic here, but that's because Buddhism in China is not something people pursue the enlightenment. No,
Correct.
it's originally in the court, and nobody knows about it until because the political chaos, people start to find a new solution. And when you start to find a solution, and gradually blending with the Taoism has become Chinese Buddhism. So you can see that Taoism actually affected a little bit, but it's not something totally done. Just today, you can see still Confucianism is still strong. But China is different because of political reason. They do not allow any religion. So pretty much all I say is in Taiwan situation. China right now they start to allow the religion, but it's controlled by government. Okay, still.
Taiwan has like what, 15,000 temples, Buddhist temples?
I do not know how many,
Yeah.
but a lot. But the other hand is it's quite deviated from the original Buddhism, from the Buddha, a little bit. Yeah. One more question.
There's a
Oh,
story
sorry.
of a Pallava prince who went to China, who also helped propagate Buddhism.
Which
The Pallava prince. Pallava is a southern Indian kingdom, a dynasty. So there's a story of a Pallava prince who went to China, settled there, helped propagate Buddhism, and also develop martial arts. I don't know.
Is that going to Tibet or something?
No, it's in China.
I do not know that. That part of the story I do not know. One more question. Sorry, you
There's
guys.
one here.
Yeah.
Just have a question, does anybody practices Buddhism in China?
Do people practice Buddhism in China now?
Oh yes, they do. But in a way that right now it's dominated by the Tibetan Buddhism. But on the other hand is government watching every organization there. So it's kind of some kind of freedom, but just like the church, the same thing. Yeah, they give you some kind of freedom, but you cannot do certain things. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Before we get into the evolution of Sufism, I just wanted to make a few general points so that we are all on the same page about what Sufism is. I just thought it would be nice to start looking at this image. If any of you has visited a Sufi shrine or a dargah in India or South Asia, you will often see popular posters like this which will show famous Sufi saints of the past along with the shrines. So it kind of encapsulates all the history of basically several hundred years of Sufism in India in one picture. And I won't go and identify all the buildings and people here, but we can, whoops, wrong direction. Hope that's not too faint. So just to establish what Sufism is for us here, basically it's a mystical path to God, and the closest it comes to, for those of us more familiar with Indian literatures and traditions, is devotional poetry, and I will say a little more about that in a few minutes, how Sufism and Sufi and devotional poetry, they share a lot of common poetics, ideas, and aesthetics. We spoke about language. We heard this wonderful presentation about language, and I would just say that Islam came to India, and through the Quran, which is the main text, and that's in Arabic. But the language of Sufism, which is more a popular kind of practice of Islam, devotional Islam, is through Persian. It came through Persian, and then so-called Indian vernacular languages of the people, because Sufism was more a movement, a kind of, or we could call it more set of practices that were among all kinds of people, not just elite, educated people, but common people as well. So on the one hand, you have theoretical works on Sufism from the Middle Eastern traditions, from India, which talk about the philosophy and the ideas, and they are more in Persian and sometimes in Arabic. But the poetry, which is really the heart of Sufism, was in Persian, and then it developed in different languages, in what we heard as the Khari Boli language around Delhi, in Punjabi, because Sufis came from the northwest, then later Sindhi and also Bengali and other languages. And this, the form, the Hindi, or it's often called Hindvi in the Sufi tradition, it's a very early form of the language in which Sufi poetry and devotion was expressed, and I will give you an example. In Sufism, as I have here, the emphasis is on love, so that you kind of approach God not through ritual prayers, not necessarily through ritual prayers, and just kind of a strict following of a kind of a set of rules and practices, but more of an emotional connection to the divine. And I think that's why today Sufism appeals to a much more universal audience. Originally, Sufism was only sort of, it's restricted to Islam. So that's something that sometimes, when I teach it to the students get confused, that sometimes they think Sufism is an alternate form of Islam. It was not, at least, and it's not supposed to be. It is just, a form of practicing Islam, so that every Sufi had to be kind of a practicing Muslim. Of course, the way we understand it today has changed a lot, because it's become part of the New Age spiritual movement and culture. So that the emphasis is on love, and so love poetry developed in all these languages, as I said, rather than the intellectual traditions and Orthodox Islam. I mean, that was also there, but Sufism acted as a way to convert people much more sort of easily, because it was easier to appeal to people through this kind of language of love that borrowed from different Indian regional traditions, as I will give you one example later in the few minutes I have. And I'm sure you all know the performance of Qawwali. It's very popular today. So Qawwali is the kind of the heart of Sufi devotional practice, sort of the practice of poetry. It's the kind of singing of that poetry in different languages, poetry from, verses from Persian and Hindi and Punjabi. They are mixed in the Qawwali performance. A strictly Sufi Qawwali is very different from, if some of you may know, the Bollywood film Qawwali, which also, of course, developed from the same tradition. But the initiator, sort of the origins of Qawwali, they go back to the period we are concerned with here, between, let's say, 1200 and 1500. And the main figure, here we have an image of Sufis dancing, you have the presence of a Sufi master, a pir or murshid, and then you have the devotees, a murid. And so Qawwali, this is how it began in Persian lands, that you perform music and sometimes dance to get into the kind of the spirit of kind of, then you can have a communion with the divine. Now, within India during this period, Qawwali developed a very special form, and that is uniquely part of Indian Sufism. You don't have the same Qawwali in, say, Iranian Sufism or Moroccan Sufism. They have other kinds of, you may have heard of the whirling dervishes in Turkey. That's their form of devotion. But Qawwali is, very quintessentially Indian and South Asian. And one of the key figures in the development of Qawwali was a poet named Amir Khusro of Delhi. And he was a poet and a courtier. There's still debate whether he was a Sufi himself. He certainly believed in he had a Sufi master and was kind of a disciple, but he never gave up his worldly, courtly life to become a full-fledged Sufi, say like Rumi had been a Sufi. So Amir Khusro's poetry is sung to this day, by many Qawwals. I'm sure all of you have heard it, whether you know it's by Amir Khusro or not, because it comes to us in many places and in many forms, even in film songs. Here is an image which is, probably not realistic, but someone's imagination at some point in the past of Amir Khusro to the right, and the older man is his Pir Nizamuddin Aulia, because every Sufi you had to have like a guru, a master, and that was his master. This is the shrine of Nizamuddin Aulia in Delhi. It's a very popular place for everyone, not just Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs. A lot of tourists go there to listen to Qawwali, especially now it's in all the guidebooks that on Thursday night you can go and listen to Qawwali at the shrine of Nizamuddin Aulia. And so it's a very bustling kind of a place. It can, and right in the shrine complex is the tomb of the poet Amir Khusro, because he was a devotee of Nizamuddin Aulia. He's buried nearby, and then there are a number of other tombs there around there as well. So the two forms that what basically Amir Khusro is known for is his family had come from Central Asia, and they were Persian and Turkish speaking. So he was, he knew all these languages and several Indian languages. So basically, single-handedly what he did in the 13th and early 14th century is really take, many kind of Islamic practices in Islam and then blend them in with Indian traditions and come up with an Indian form of Islam. More to our interest here is what he did with Sufi poetry. So he took the ghazal, and we all know the ghazal from Urdu, but it has an older Persian tradition.
Right.
Okay, and he then blended the traditions of the ghazal with the Geet kind of traditions of India. And one of the perfect examples is this Qawwali, which you may have heard. It's Zehale Miskin Makun Tagapul Durai Nena Banai Batiya. This song has one line in Persian and one in Hindi. And this kind of encapsulates exactly what Amir Khusro was trying to do, is take that Persian Sufi tradition and then, sort of combine it with Indian song and devotional traditions. And so if we had time to look at it very carefully, you would see how he's playing with the voices as well. Because in Indian devotional poetry, whether it was a woman or a man writing devotional poetry, the voice was always of a woman, a Virahini, pining woman. Khusro adopted that for his Sufi poetry, so that, in, say, another famous Qawwali song of his, Mohe Apne Rang Mein Rang De, it's the voice of a woman, and the woman is saying, "Come, color me in your own hue. You are my Lord, beloved of God. My veil and my lover's turban, color them both with spring." So you see that this is kind of a devotional poem. You must I'm sure, as I said, most of you have heard some version of it, if not the real thing. So this is what Khusro is taking this on. And just as an example, I wanted to give you one of Mirabai's songs, Main to Saamne Ki Rang Rachi, which, she comes a little later, but this is also, they're both drawing upon the same tradition of devotional poetry. Mira says, he has stained me the color of raven, he stained me, and she goes on, and this is a very famous song. Mira's Lord is a true prince, he stained her the color of raven, birth after birth she is his. So we see that, when I sort of take these two poems with my students and we do a comparison of the poetics, the imagery, you see that, there are many similar things happening in terms of imagery, the use of, the metaphor of color, the voice, the female voice of the longing, Virahini, etc. But for two very different purposes. One is part of the Bhakti, Mira's poetry is part of the Bhakti movement, and Khusro's poem is part of the Sufi, kind of movement, which have a lot in common, and the goal is union with the divine in both traditions, but they are both embedded within two different religious traditions. And so, just to conclude, I would say that, Khusro, as I said, was a very important figure in the early period, so that by the time, if we were to go on after 1500, we'd see that his influence was huge in the centuries afterwards, and in those centuries when Sufi poetry really developed with figures like Bulle Shah and Abdul Latif in Punjab and Sindh mostly, but in other parts of India, and his own poetry kept being sung, and as I said, it is still alive today in many different forms, but the most purest form would be around the dargahs, the Chishti, because he was of the Chishti order, Nizamuddin, so around the Chishti dargahs, whether in Delhi or in Ajmer or Lahore and other places like that. So maybe I could end here, and I'd be happy to answer questions. Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
the question is that Sufism actually is developed in 11th or 12th centuries, or do you say that?
When they first came to India,
Yeah,
they have an earlier history in the Middle East.
Okay. What is the main reason when it developed in Islamic worlds? Is that from Konya, Osman?
Konya?
Or is it from?
Though that was Rumi was in Konya, yeah, that was a little later, yeah. The Sufis who first came to India, they came from the, eastern Europe, what's Afghanistan today and that area. Islam came as a conquest, right? Sufism was more sort of wherever Islam's frontier expanded, wherever the frontier of, Muslim lands expanded, which it did in northwest and North India first, Sufis followed because they wanted to establish those lands as, the kind of the spiritual authority in the lands. They were not there preaching in mosques or, that they went among the people and lived they were very similar to ascetics or sadhus in a way. They felt it to be sort of a calling in a way, or if you had a Sufi master, he would direct you to go somewhere. That, for instance, we had, Baba Farid was told to, Farid Ganja Shakar was told to go to Pakpatan in Punjab because that's where your mission is. So the Pir would tell you where to go.
Yeah, my main question is why it developed?
Why it developed? I think because it had more appeal to people, because especially communities, lower, communities whose identities were sort of not fixed, or and so I think Sufism gave you kind of a devotional sort of, it had its devotional appeal. So, yeah, it's a very complicated question. I work more on the poetry, not so much the kind of the history.
Is Sufism developed in India or it came to India?
No, it didn't develop in India, it came to India. So it developed, as I said, it's because it's tied with the history of Islam. So Sufis were kind of, the ascetics as far back as in the Arabian deserts, and they may have, inherited traditions from old Byzantine monks or Jewish kind of mystics. But as it came eastwards, it became more Persian, and then in India it developed its own form. One of the first Sufis was Hujwiri, who had come to Lahore in the 11th century, and then Moinuddin Chishti from Chisht in Afghanistan. So they also fled invasion sometimes, so that they went east because they had to go somewhere. But Indian Sufism is unique in its practices, but it's not sort of that's not where it developed. Yeah.
Good.
I have
Sure. Julie, yeah. Ladies first. Yes.
you just were saying that you are going to give an example, so I'm just curious.
I just quickly went through these poems. Yeah, this is what basically I work on in comparative literature. So I look at different traditions. There was one there, and then
Very
sorry.
quickly, actually, that Sufis, at some point of time in history, they were viewed as heretics also.
Yes,
in the
very
Islamic,
often, yeah.
tradition. So, let's say in the past few hundred years,
Right.
in the Indian subcontinent, is that kind of tension still there, or has it existed between
Absolutely.
the heretic Sufis and...
Right. It's existed from the beginning of Islam. One of the earliest Sufis in the 9th century in Baghdad, Hallaj, was executed because the more orthodox kind of clerics saw Sufism as a threat, because they thought it was heretical, because it was more about this poetry of love, and they thought some of it was blasphemous. This voices using a voice of woman and longing and stuff, and it's still true. So you often hear of. In Iran, Sufism was banned long ago because of Shiism. Afghanistan, Pakistan, you often have attacks on Sufi shrines. India, because of its syncretic culture, we've so far managed to preserve it, that beautiful kind of space where people meet. Yeah, I think you had a question.
What is the purpose or object of the whirling?
Right. That was to get into a trance. So whether it's music or dance, it's to kind of focus your energy so that it heightens your senses and so that you approach the divine more easily. And that's why sometimes Sufis like sadhus would often have they would take narcotics, and because this heightened sense meant that's the closer you are to God. Yeah.